Today, I'm going to show you a 2021 American action film called Nobody. The film starts with an injured man who's being questioned by two detectives. He's feeding a cat when the detective asks who he is. He says, "I'm nobody." The next scene takes us back a few days, and we find out that the man's name is Hutch. He's your average middle-aged guy who works a white-collar job in a factory. His life is monotonous and somewhat boring. Every day he wakes up and misses the garbage truck, goes for a run, and goes to work. His wife Becca is a realtor, and their marital life is not going great. Hutch seems tired and disconnected from his life and everyone in it. He has a son and a daughter. Then one night, he wakes up to some noises in the middle of the night. He goes downstairs to find two people who broke into his house. He gives them the few loose dollars that he had in his house. He notices a strange tattoo on the woman assailant's wrist. All of a sudden, his son takes down one of the robbers. The woman points a gun at Hutch's son, and Hutch goes to hit her in the head, but then he stops and asks his son to let them go. The assailants leave, and Hutch calls the cops. His son asks him why he didn't hit the woman. The next morning, Hutch is making breakfast when his son tells him that he has to interview an army vet for a school project. Hutch used to be an auditor in the army. He agrees to give the interview, but his wife suggests that her son ask his uncle Charlie because Charlie saw some action. His son agrees, and this upsets Hutch. When he tries to leave for work, his neighbor shows off his cool new car. Hutch arrives at the factory that's owned by his father-in-law and his brother-in-law, Charlie. Charlie gives Hutch a gun to protect his family. He also lectures Hutch about not using force against the robbers. Hutch intends to buy the factory from his father, who doesn't want to sell it. Hutch throws the gun into the back of a freezer. He then goes to his office and turns on an old army two-way radio. The guy on the other end of the radio is his stepbrother, Harry. Harry asks Hutch about last night's events. Hutch explains how there were two people, a man and a woman. He tells Harry that both of the robbers were scared and they didn't even have bullets in the gun. Harry tells Hutch that he reacted the right way. He also asks Hutch not to do anything stupid and to forget about this incident. Hutch visits his father David after work that day at a nursing home. His father's a retired FBI agent who also served in the military. That evening, Hutch gets home to find his daughter searching for a lost bracelet. She thinks that the robbers probably stole the bracelet. This sets Hutch off. He silently leaves the house and takes a bus to his father's nursing home. He takes his father's gun and his old FBI ID card and heads out into the city. He goes to every tattoo artist in the city and asks about the tattoo that he saw on the robber's hand. He ends up in a shady-looking shop where he shows the ID card and asks about the tattoo. However, people in there figure out that he isn't an FBI agent and are ready to beat him up. Just then, an old man inside the shop sees a tattoo on Hutch's wrist. The old man recognizes this tattoo and gets scared. He leaves the shop after thanking Hutch for his service. The shop owner figures out that Hutch is someone dangerous and gives up the robber's address. Hutch gets inside the house of the robbers and starts pointing a gun at them. He looks to be out of control and asks them about his daughter's bracelet. They tell him that they didn't take any bracelet, but Hutch beats the guy up. Just then, a baby starts crying in the next room. Hutch finds out that the robbers have a child with breathing issues. He leaves their apartment after taking back his watch. He goes out into the rain and starts punching a wall before getting on the bus. On his way home, a Hummer crashes next to their bus, and the bus stops. Some men come out of the Hummer, and they look like gangsters. They're asking the bus driver to let them on. Hutch prays to God to let the men come inside the bus. The bus driver gives in and opens the door. The men come inside and start making a scene. They corner a young girl and ask everyone else to leave. This brings a smile to Hutch's face, and he takes the bus driver's phone before escorting her out. He locks the bus door and calls the men out. He threatens to mess them up, and they start laughing. After this, a fight breaks out, and Hutch beats the hell out of those men. He also gets hurt, and one guy ends up stabbing him. They eventually throw Hutch out of the bus, but he just stands up and goes back inside. At this moment, the gangsters are afraid of Hutch. He starts beating them up badly, and even stabs a couple of them. One man tries to load bullets into a gun, but Hutch hits him on his throat and nearly kills him. After this, he just casually gets out of the bus and leaves. He gets home really late that night, and his wife is still up. She notices how Hutch is all beaten up and starts patching him up. Hutch starts talking about how he misses their young selves. He tells his wife that he's sad because their marriage has lost its passion. Meanwhile, a middle-aged Russian guy is dancing in his nightclub in the city. His name is Yulian, and despite looking like a hippie, he's a psychotic mob boss. He kills people for simply staring at him. He finds out that someone beat the life out of his brother. He goes to the hospital and finds the men who Hutch beat on the bus. He's angry and wants to know Hutch's whereabouts. One of the injured men gives him the bus card that Hutch left behind. Hutch, on the other hand, wakes up a new man. He's happy and jubilant, but then he receives a call from his brother Harry. Harry tells him that he made a mistake by hurting Yulian's brother. He asks Hutch to talk to the barber. Hutch reluctantly does so, and the barber tells him that Yulian is a scary mob boss. He also tells Hutch that Yulian is currently providing security to the Russian mob's savings fund that's called the Obshak. The Obshak is hundreds of millions of dollars in cash. Yulian also owns paintings worth millions of dollars. Yulian, on the other hand, finds out that Hutch is a Secret Service contractor who has killed many people. So Yulian decides to send a dozen armed guys along with his sidekick Pavel to kill Hutch. Meanwhile, Hutch is having a great family dinner when he sees Yulian's guys in the streets. He sends his family into the secret panic room and shuts down all the lights. He uses his skills to take down almost all of Yulian's men, but one of them ends up taking Hutch down. Hutch wakes up as the men are transporting him in the trunk back of their car. He takes the fire extinguisher from the trunk and opens the backseat latch. He sprays the CO2 inside, and this leads to a crash. Hutch somehow survives this and gets out of the trunk. Pavel is lying on the ground, bleeding heavily. He asks Hutch, "Who the hell are you?" Hutch tells him that he used to work for secret agencies as an auditor who eliminated certain people. Pavel dies, and Hutch runs back into his home. He calls his dad to warn him about a possible attack. At home, he patches himself up and escorts his confused family to the garage. He asks his wife to leave town and promises to explain everything later. Hutch then simply puts on a record and sits down for a drink. A couple of the assailants are barely alive, and Hutch tells them a story. He explains how he once left a man named Alan alive because Alan promised to become a good man. Later on, Hutch found out that Alan had a happy family and an honest job. This caused Hutch to quit his job as an auditor because he wanted a normal life too. After telling his story, he burns his house down and all the attackers with it. He steals his neighbor's retro car and leaves. He also takes a lot of gold and cash from his hidden safe with him. Hutch goes straight to his father-in-law's office and offers him a lot of gold for his factory. His father-in-law agrees happily. Meanwhile, Yulian's men go to the nursing home to kill David, but David shoots them both down. Hutch closes the factory down the next day and sets up a lot of deadly traps. That night, Yulian is singing in his club when Hutch enters Yulian's safe house and kills all the security guards. He then proceeds to burn down all the money in the Obshak and also all of Yulian's art except for one painting. He eventually goes to Yulian's club and has dinner in front of him. When Yulian and his men try to kill Hutch, he shows them that he's brought an old landmine with him. He asks Yulian for a private talk where he explains how he burnt the Obshak. He makes a peace offering to Yulian and leaves. Outside the club, Hutch is sitting in his car, fingers crossed, and hoping that Yulian will come after him. That's exactly what happens, and Hutch speeds away with a grin on his face. Yulian and all his men chase Hutch back to the factory and manage to shoot him in the arm. Just then, Harry and David come out of the factory and start taking down Yulian's men. All of them go inside and use all the traps to kill dozens of Yulian's guys. In a very cool scene, Harry kills 3 guys with a single sniper shot. They use homemade bombs and wire traps to decimate the invaders. In the end, however, Harry is shot while Hutch and David have no more bullets left. Yulian is still alive and shooting at them. At this point, Hutch tapes the landmine to a bulletproof glass and runs at Yulian. He pulls the pin and blows Yulian away. He also gets hurt but survives while Yulian dies. The police arrive at this point and Harry leaves with David. Then the film takes us back to the scene where Hutch is being questioned. Just then, both detectives receive calls where they are told to let Hutch go. 3 months later, a realtor is showing Hutch and Becca a new home. The realtor receives a call and tells Hutch that it's for him. He listens to the call and asks the realtor if the house has a basement. The film ends with Hutch and Becca smiling. The post-credit scene, however, shows Harry and David traveling in an RV. They're going on a mission as the RV is packed with weapons. So guys, how did you like this film? Do you think this is a better version of John Wick? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. This is it for today, and we'll meet you in the next video.